Well then, there are just 2 match days to go before Christmas and the official halfway point of the championship season as we return today for match day 22. We're going to preview and give our predictions for all the matches, and of course we'll encourage you to do exactly the same in the comments. If you beat or match my overall score, you will get a shout out in the next recap as we come back for next weekend's fixtures just before Christmas. But before we go and look ahead to all of those, and of course a particularly juicy one at the start of matchday 22, we've got to go back and have a review of matchday 21, where at last I found my form. I'm back, I'm scoring big points and all the perfect scores are coming at once. I was joint top of the Premier League predictions, I got 4 perfect scores in League One, and now I've got 4 perfect scores in the Championship. 15 points overall, but my 4 correct scores were Blackburn's win against Bristol Rovers, West Brom's win at Rotherham, that on Liam Richardson's debut, Stoke and Swansea, and Coventry and Southampton, both the Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1. It's delivered again at last, a bit of a festive treat. The other 3 points for Ipswich, Leicester and Norwich, but let's see how you all got on in the comments. And I hate to be smug and I hate to have that attitude, but I did beat you all. I'm sorry about that. Maybe next week you'll all get a shout out. Let's see if you can get revenge on me in matchday 22. And we start with the big derby, and one that they have been waiting a long time for down in East Anglia. It is Ipswich Town versus Norwich City. And both sides come into this one, well, in pretty good form in truth. Norwich have picked up 13 points in their last 6 games after David Wagner had been under pressure prior to that. Ipswich have won 5 of their last 6 and have been, well, the joint best home team in the division, the top scorers at home in the division, and if you combine that with the fact that Norwich have conceded the second most away from home, you might be questioning how many Ipswich are going to win by here. But derbies don't often work like that, and let's talk about some of the reasoning behind it. Ipswich have not won in the last 12 league fixtures between these sides, including a doubleheader in the playoffs a few years back. And even though they've started this season brilliantly, you just don't know what to expect in a game like this. Both sides being in good form probably doesn't help them because Norwich were dwindling a few weeks back. But you've just got the feeling that this is going to be goals galore. You've got a brilliant home attack against an awful away defence. You've got teams that have been scoring pretty freely in recent weeks. And I just feel there's got to be goals. It's not really worth going through all the stats for this one because ultimately, most derby games completely ignore them. Ipswich did well to respond from behind against Watford and get themselves a late win. Norwich against Sheffield Wednesday again pulled away in the second half after being pegged back before the break. Both teams happy with how they're going. Norwich, if they win on Saturday lunchtime, could conceivably go into the playoffs, albeit it would take a big goal difference swing. They could certainly get themselves in the mix. Ipswich could momentarily go top, and that's what I'm going to go for. Ipswich to win, and I'm going big. I was sitting on 4-2 for a while, but I can't justify it. Ipswich to get their first win in 13 in this fixture, and to do it by 4 goals to 1 in style. How wrong is that going to be? Let's move on to the 3 PM kickoffs, and we start with Bristol City versus Sunderland. The visitors still managerless as we speak, but who cares? Because Dodsey is doing the job, isn't he? 2 wins in a row against very good opposition in the top 6. And Sunderland, as a result, keep their place in there as well. Will still is the favourite at the minute, but I'm recording this on Thursday afternoon, so I've no idea what will have happened by Saturday. For Bristol City, 1 point in 4 games, and 3 of them against sides in and around them in the division. Bit of a concerning time for Liam Manning after that fairly positive start. And you do feel that they're just struggling for goals at the minute. And maybe are in for a difficult spell over the festive period, because in this one they gifted away a 2-goal lead, and while they did create chances against Blackburn, as everyone does, they did struggle defensively yet again. For Sunderland, a really disciplined performance against Leeds, a late winner, a really good display, giving up the ball and hitting on the counter, almost what we saw from them away from home at times last year. But for this one, I'm going to sit on the fence. I can see it being a frustrating game for Sunderland. I can see Bristol City keeping the ball a bit. I can see Sunderland having a threat on the counter. But after it delivered for me on multiple occasions in midweek, I'm going to sit with a Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1. Let's move on to our third game and 2 sides that had contrasting midweek efforts. It is Hull City versus Cardiff City. Hull with an excellent win away at Middlesbrough, again coming from behind in the second half. A game that, for the most part, they were second best in according to the stats, but he did create the best chances in that game. And in the end, they got their win, a brilliant away performance, and still having a very good season. I can't help but praise them continuously. For Cardiff, a few more worrying signs recently. While they had lost a few games against Southampton, West Brom, Norwich, etc., against a Birmingham side who had one away win all year, who didn't win an away game under Rooney, and who had a manager under big pressure. That is a poor result for Cardiff. They can't really have too many complaints. It's not a game they dominated or anything, and it's just starting to look a little bit tough in front of goal. That's one scored in their last 4 matches. We did suggest earlier in the season this would be the problem with Balut's side. They performed above expectations so far, and they're still relatively robust defensively. But going into this one, I do worry that Hull are the team in better form. Yes, they had a poor day away at QPR, but their home form, bar the Watford game with that absolute rocket to win it, had been improving quite significantly. Okay, their recent wins at home had come against the likes of Rotherham and Huddersfield, but I still think they'll have enough to pip this one. I don't think it's going to be a great game. You can't really go high scoring, so I'm going to go for Hull City to win it, and to win it by 1-0. Let's move on to a team that were frustrated on Tuesday night. It is Leeds United versus Coventry City. Let's get Coventry out the way. A goal for Haji Wright and a good point against Southampton. It is now a very good effort from them, with 3 wins and a draw in their last 5, 10 points out of 15, and the only points dropped against 2 teams in the top 4. You've got to say Coventry are starting to find form again, but away to Leeds United, it does not get any easier. Yes, they were beaten 1-0 against Sunderland. Yes, they were done by a very disciplined display, despite keeping the ball a lot away from home. A few hallmarks of the Rotherham game, but without the clear-cut openings. But they've still been very good at home recently. They've not been absolutely blowing teams away, but they've been winning matches. They've been efficient. They've been getting the scores they need. I'm kind of going to go for the same again in this one. Coventry's goal threat has not been consistent enough and ruthless enough. And that's sort of the vulnerability for Leeds. You can create a couple of good chances a game, but you've got to bank on taking them. And Coventry probably can't do that. So as a result, I'm going to go for Leeds to win in a solid rather than spectacular fashion. Coventry definitely making their way back up, but on this occasion, Leeds to win it by 2-1. Let's move on to Millwall v Huddersfield. 2 sides that were disappointed in midweek. Both conceded 3, but very different circumstances. Huddersfield beaten at home to Preston by 3-1. All 3 shots on target went in for the visitors, but Huddersfield gave up a 2-goal lead in the first half and didn't look the most inspiring, which now they're starting to get those players back. Yes, maybe it takes a couple of weeks, but you would be expecting improved performances pretty quickly from now. Whereas Millwall was a good start, wasn't it, away at Leicester? Good first half, and then it all went wrong. Leicester have got the quality to carve anyone open, and when you just give up so much of the ball, you're always going to come under pressure. It was a game with plenty of clear-cut chances, and it was probably a quite fair score in the end. But Millwall have been chasing the ball a lot on Wednesday night, and I wonder if that will have an impact on Saturday, because Huddersfield, based on recent games, will probably be quite happy to give up the ball. They had been 4 unbeaten prior to that Preston match, and I think they're going to get a result out of this. I don't think it's going to be a particularly good defensive display from either, and I do think we're going to see some tired legs there. But I'm going to go for Millwall 2, Huddersfield 2 at the Den. I've just got a feeling that despite both sides not being that high scoring, there's going to be a few little surprises defensively. So 20th v 21st, both under pressure from the relegation zone. And depending on what QPR do away at Sheffield Wednesday, the loser of this one could end up in the relegation zone. Let's move on to another pretty big game in that race at the bottom. It is Plymouth Argyle against Rotherham United. Liam Richardson's debut did not go to plan. A 2-0 defeat at home to West Brom. The second one late on saw them off. It was a poor game of very few chances, and in the end, West Brom just had that extra bit of magic. Players like Dean Garner and Wallace, Rotherham haven't got that, and that's just unfortunate. But as with most home games, they were competitive. They were in it for the most part. But this was the question we asked in that manager special on Tuesday. You can find it in the eye above if you haven't seen it. Myself and Craig talked about Rotherham's away form. Can they find a way to stop shipping goals? Well, Plymouth aren't the ideal opposition to come up against in that scenario. At home, they have got the 7th best record in the Championship. And if you take aside Ipswich Town, who we mentioned at the start, they're also the highest scorers at home. Yes, they've drawn 2 blanks in a row on the road, but a decent point at QPR in the circumstances. keeps the gap there to 3, and given the fact they played with 10 men for over an hour, I think they'll be absolutely delighted to have held them off. To give away nearly 30 chances, 3/4 of the ball, loads of shots on target. Shout out to the keeper who made 10 saves, I think it was officially. It was a really good, gutsy defensive effort. On another day, QPR would have got 2 or 3, but Plymouth, they stuck in the game. They've not always done that on the road this year, so big credit to them. At home, though, I think they're going to be a lot more enticing. We've seen quality from them throughout our home park. They won their last 2 against Sunderland and Stoke. And against Rotherham's defence, as good as Liam Richardson is, he's not going to have an impact that quickly for me. They'll probably try and set up a bit more cautiously and hit on a counter. But I just think Plymouth will be too good. So I'm going to go for them to win by 3-1 at home park. Into the second half, and we get to a game that promises to be very low scoring. It is Preston North End versus Watford. Preston just don't really score goals. Watford have scored 7 on the road all season. And Preston, how much did they need that win? 3-1 at Huddersfield with 3 shots on target. We mentioned it so many times. It's so hard when you can't just dominate football matches. But they got a good win. It was pretty comfortable in the end. And it ended a run of 4 games where they'd only scored 1. And they'd not really been very good defensively. So definitely an important win for Ryan Lowe's side. Remarkably, they're still 8th because of that start they had in the first 8 games. Whereas Watford, a solid effort against Ipswich. They gave it their best against the top team, but in the end, they wasted a couple of good chances, and they've not been consistent enough defensively this year. Ultimately, there are flaws in Watford's game, but they are improving under Valérien Ismaël and they're competitive. But from 1-0 up, they'll be frustrated at losing that. In this game, no, I think it's going to play a flip reversal, because I think they're going to go 1-0 up, and I think they're going to hold on. Quite a lot of people will probably go for Preston now after midweek. But I'm actually going to go for Watford to nick this game. I think it'll be an ugly one by 1-0. Let's move on to another huge game in the bottom 3. It is Sheffield Wednesday from second bottom against QPR from third bottom. QPR make the unbeaten run 4, but they'll be disappointed. We mentioned it with Plymouth. Playing over an hour against 10 men, having 30 shots, dominating the game, but not able to find a way through. It's almost as if they need space in behind a side to come out against them. And Sheffield Wednesday have probably got to do that because they're 8 points from safety. This is a winnable game at home to a side in and around them. Danny Roll has got to target it and look as an opportunity to close the gap, because with Millwall and Huddersfield facing each other and with Sheffield Wednesday facing QPR, the minimum they can be away from safety is 6 points if they win this game. It's a really important one for them. At Norwich, it was a strange game. It wasn't a bad display overall. They had a lot of efforts going forward, but were restricted at times to long distance ones. And on another day, to be honest, it could have been 6-6 that match. I think the official clear-cut chances were 5-3 in Norwich's favour. But Sheffield Wednesday had over 20 attempts on goal. They had corners, they forced saves, but they just weren't solid enough at the back. And in the end, it was a very frustrating day for them. So based on that, I really don't know what to go for this. I have flipped between 2 scores consistently. I did originally put the Championship's favourite scoreline, and I've changed it just before we started. I've gone for QPR to win by 2-1, and that will take them out of the relegation zone, which I think will make a huge impact going into the festive period. Next up is Southampton versus Blackburn Rovers as the Saints continue their unbeaten run, but it is now 3-1 all draws in their last 5 games. A disappointing one at Coventry as they were frustrated for the most part. They did come back into it after falling behind, but just starting to get back into that trap of having 70 to 75% of the ball and not really creating an awful lot with it. Lots of corners, lots of blocked opportunities to get the ball in. But overall, it didn't really open Coventry up, and while they're a good side, they will find that a bit frustrating. It does mean the gap now to the top 2 is 12 points, which is something they will have been keeping an eye on. Whereas for Blackburn, a very important win against Bristol City. A bit of outside talk about John Dale Thomason with Stoke at the time, which does seem to be fading at the time of recording. But a really good result. Again, didn't make it easy for themselves from 2-0 up. Defensively, they are frail at the best of times, but they create chances. They took a couple this time, and they get themselves back up in that playoff mix. They've scored and conceded 34 each this season. Southampton, pretty high scorers and conceders as well. This should be a high-scoring game. I just feel Blackburn give away too many chances. You've seen in recent matches, they've conceded, 8 in their last 4? 2 against Leeds, 3 against Wednesday, 2 against Birmingham, who couldn't score at the time. And I think Southampton will take advantage. A possession game against a side that open, it really should work out. I'm going to go for Southampton to win by 3-1. On to the final game on Saturday. It is Swansea City versus Middlesbrough. Swansea held by managerless Stoke in a 1-1 draw. A late equaliser, which will have made the day better than it could have been, but not the best performance if we're being honest. Stoke probably edged the game and deserved to nick it, but Swansea got the point, made it 3 unbeaten, and they themselves are still looking for a new manager. Whereas Middlesbrough, they just looked to be picking up, didn't they? Now it's 4 defeats in 5, 3 in a row, and while they've all been against tricky opposition, again, it's the defensive frailties that are being exposed. 7 conceded in those 3 matches, just 3 scored as well. And against Hull City, despite taking an early lead, they always looked a little vulnerable. Yes, they had more of the game overall, but they gave up a couple of very good chances. And in the end, it's going to be a big concern for Carrick that defensively, yes, with injuries, suspensions and whatever else, they are looking a little bit vulnerable at the minute. Because of Swansea's recent games and because Borough can't afford to lose again, I am going to sit on a fence with this one. And I'm going to go for the scoreline that delivered for me for Swansea in midweek. I'm going to go for back-to-back 1-1 draws for them, the Championship's favourite scoreline at the Swansea City Stadium. Let's move on to Sunday lunchtime and a Sky Sports game. It is West Brom versus Stoke. Stoke managerless at the minute, and at the time of recording, Nuno Espirito Santo has just jumped into the favourites role. They actually played all right against Swansea, but it's a horrible winless run. They're in big trouble at the bottom. Again, if results go the other way, they could be in a spot above at come the end of the weekend. Whereas for West Brom, they don't care if there's a new manager in charge. As they proved against Liam Richardson's Rotherham, they're going to be efficient and do the job. 2 goals, 2 shots on target. A pretty average display, but I've said it so many times. This is the hallmark of Carlos Corberán. He did this with Huddersfield. He's doing it with West Brom. And I'm so confident the way they're going that they're going to be in the top 6 come the end of the year. He's doing a remarkable job to get the side organised with what he's got. He's managing to get those bits of individual flair and magic out of his attacking stars. And again, they just look absolutely ruthless. It's had a couple of tough games, and you look at their recent form and say, yes, they've lost 3 of their last 6, but they're against Sunderland, Leicester and Southampton, all in the top 6, 2 of them away from home. And they've also beaten Ipswich in that period as well. So whenever they've come up against sides ranked lower in the division, they've managed to keep clean sheets galore. I'm going to go for the same again, the same scoreline. West Brom to win it by 2-0. And the final game is on Monday night, and it features a very relieved Wayne Rooney as Birmingham City face Leicester City. And Birmingham have finally got a win, and an away win at that. A 1-0 at Cardiff in a game that was pretty evenly matched, but for Birmingham it was a much improved away performance, whereas usually they've just sort of laid down and been beaten comfortably, as we saw at Coventry in the game prior. For Leicester, didn't make easy work of it, but did get the win in the end against Millwall. They're flying high at the top, and with the sides from third down faltering, they're starting to build another massive gap in the top 2. We know how good they are away from home. We know they're virtually impossible to beat. Just 1 defeat in their 10 games away from the King Power, and only 8 goals conceded in that time as well. This is going to be a tough ask for Birmingham. They have been better at home. They've not conceded many at home, but the form has dropped under Rooney. There's no doubt in that. This is a game where you could just see a surprise come in. You don't know what that win will do for Birmingham. But on this occasion, I am going to go for Leicester. I've got to go safe with it. I'm basically going to have to go for them to win every game, aren't I? I'm going to go for 2-0 in this one. And I think the away side, they've just got too much. They're solid enough at the back. Yes, the Millwall game was a slight exception. But going forward, they'll probably carve Birmingham apart. With that out the way though, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for in Matchday 22. And after picking up a very big points total in midweek, I'm trying my best to throw it away this time. Not many safe scorelines, but the big headline news is at the start. I've gone for Ipswich to win the East Anglian derby 4-1, despite going 12 winless in this fixture, albeit they've not played for 4 years in it. I've gone for Southampton and Plymouth to score 3 at home in victories, QPR to take their chance to go out the relegation zone, and 2 Championship's favourite scoreline predictions, which hopefully will deliver for me again. But those are just my predictions for Matchday 22. Do you agree or disagree with them? Let me know in the comments section. Give me your predictions as always, and if you beat or match my score, you will get a shout out in the recap next week. Of course, the good news for you, there's no chance I'm matching my total of 15 points from midweek. So take your chance this week and beat me the top spot. If you did enjoy the video, please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe for regular content from the Honest Football Podcast. We had our manager special from Rotherham in the week. And of course, there's 3 more soon to be following. So get that notification bell on to make sure you don't miss them. We also had our weekend Premier League preview yesterday. You can find that up in the eye above, looking ahead to Bournemouth v Luton, a former championship fixture in these predictions. And of course, all of the other weekend ones as well. But thank you very much for watching. Your support as always is appreciated. And I'll see you back here next time for Matchday 23.